Okay. I mean, that's not at all what it's about, by the way. Ojiro, another round of applause for Ojiro. The reason I have him up here is so I'm not going to look at him. He can secretly kind of give you guys a thumbs up and thumbs down if I'm talking bullshit and making lies up here, okay? Because that's the whole point. So I'm going to try and make this quick. I'm not that great of a public speaker, but hopefully we can get to the questions quick and start thinking of them now. So it's called, I should introduce myself again. Nigel Lowrie. I work at Devolver Digital. So you don't need a fucking publisher, but if you do, ask questions. And that's what this really is about. It was a little misleading of a title. I think that one of the biggest things that people need to know is that you don't need a publisher. I think everyone knows that by now, and this is what this discussion is about, that if you do, start asking questions. Mostly, like I said, it's going to be about asking questions. Not right now. No one go to the mic. But the fundamental part of getting any sort of business deal at all, including getting a publisher, is to kind of ask questions. Know everything you can possibly know. People are still coming in. Welcome. I'll wait. I'm just kidding. This might be a short presentation. Actually, it'll end up being long because I'll mumble a lot. But I invite you to start thinking of these questions now because I think I'm here. I want to answer them. This is a forum in which I can kind of give you some information, but I do want you guys to think of questions because I'm happy to answer as many as I can. And I'll stay late. I have nothing else to do. I'm a really sad person. So a few disclosures. The first being I also, I work at an indie publisher, like I mentioned before. And the reason I wanted to do this talk is we get a lot of pitches, literally dozens and dozens of pitches. Please do not tell my wife I said that. And it's become very clear that a lot of developers don't really know either to even ask questions or the right questions to ask and who to ask them to. Like any industry, gaming is fantastic, but there's good guys, there's bad guys, and there's good guys that don't know what the fuck they're doing and maybe, aren't providing all the information that they should. So maybe I can make some decent points today, talk about what we look for, what to look for, and what to ask about before signing an agreement. So this is the agenda, aka last chance to leave before it's rude. With that said, this is not going to have a lot of cool charts and data. This is almost all entirely anecdotal stuff. My intention here is to pass on information to everybody here from my side of the fence, from the evil publisher side of the fence, and bring to light some of the issues and challenges that crop up even in our business and things I hear from developers I talk to. So indie publishers, one born every minute, right? Oh, I'm going to back up. The things I'm going to talk about actually are indie publishers. What is that? What the fuck does that even mean? Publisher, partner. Are those things, the same thing? Are they different? I think that's kind of the crux of this conversation. And then common issues. Common issues we just kind of see. So indie publishers, aka one born every minute. When I was thinking about what I was going to say here, I kept coming back to this inherent struggle that small developers have on why they might even look for a publisher. The game market is wonderful, amazing, but you're all pouring your heart and soul into these games, and it can become pretty terrifying when it's time to either really work on it or it's getting close and you want to launch, right? So oftentimes developers don't want to go it alone, and this kind of made me think of this famous scene from the opening moments of Legend of Zelda, where Link is about to embark on this grand adventure, right? And he walks into this room and some old dude tosses him a sword and gives him a warning, right? Link takes it and doesn't ask a single question, just rolls out, assumes because this guy knows what he's done, has been there, knows what he's doing, is going to give him all the information he needs. What do we find out? Yes, the sword was helpful, but it was not the only tool that he actually needed. He needed quite a few things to finish his adventure. There was more things necessary to complete this task than just the sword. So he didn't ask questions. He doesn't know who this guy is or what he did. And he doesn't know what kind of cut this guy has taken off the back end of this adventure, right? Maybe this guy's getting 75% of all the rupees that he collects. We don't even know. And what happened to Link? He didn't ask questions, and he ended up in a shitty sequel. I'm saying it. Zelda 2 sucks. So publishers have been around for nearly as long as game developers, but I did zero research on the subject, so that might not be true. But what I'm certain is there's always been this animosity between developers and publishers, and rightfully so. The latest, I think, most obvious thing is at the end of every Kickstarter, people mention, why are they doing this Kickstarter? Well, because they want to avoid publishers because they're bad. They'll ruin creativity. They'll take a hold of the game. They're going to cheat them out of money. And honestly, publishers have behaved badly for years, and this is an absolutely perfect, rational thing to say. But this happens all the time, and it's unfortunate, and there's some good people out there, and there's some bad people, like I said before, but this happens all the time. But I do think the game has changed. I think everyone in this room, this is not news, the game has changed. Digital distribution, I put the little exclamation marks because I'm not as good as Ojiro at graphics, but I put these sweet exclamation marks up there because digital distribution is a point that really changed a lot of things. It bestowed an unbelievable amount of leverage with the developer that changed everything because you can get directly to your consumers. This is an important moment, and for now, like I said, has shifted this kind of perceived power. So we've seen those bar graphs, those charts, where there's huge acceleration in the number of games being released on Steam, the App Store, everything like that. And you can argue a lot of different reasons. Digital distribution is one. Accessible tools, less stringent curation on these storefronts. But that's not the news. Everyone knows there's a lot of games out here. I especially think this audience knows there's a shitload of games out there, right? But what's interesting to us is, hey, Evan, I just saw you, sorry. What's news to us is that, or not, what's interesting to us is there are a lot of service providers now. People, whether it's a publisher or a localization company, there's a lot of things being built up around indie games and indie game developers. A service provider, like I said, can be anyone from a localization company to a testing studio, but there's more and more of these, right? And game publishers are no exception. The indie publisher market has lots of options now, okay? Devolver being one, and in the middle. But as you can see, this is a small example of the different publishers you can go with. What's important is to understand each one's direction, their strategy, their capabilities, and know what's right for your game. The names up on this screen, these two screens, I didn't know there was going to be two screens. The names up on these two screens are just a handful of companies to consider. They're publishers, they're game labels, they're whatever, but they all have their own kind of thing of taking your game, working with your game, and getting it to a larger audience. Sony Computer Entertainment obviously has their kind of angle to do it. Indie Fund specializes in obviously funding indies and having really, really friendly developer agreements. And folks like Team 17, Adult Swim, and Double Fine are fantastic groups that can release your game, but they're developers themselves, and they can offer a lot of insight in the game development. My point here is the publisher can mean a lot of different things, so I'm going to lump them all together, but they all have their own minutia and details of what they might specialize in. Water, sorry. Okay, so I want to get to the meat of this. We know that there's a shitload of options. I'm cussing a lot, I apologize. There's a ton of options out there when a developer wants to find a publisher to work with, and now you need to get to this vetting process, right? What's going to work for you, what's going to work for your team, and what's going to work for the game itself. So most of the developers that we talk to, the discussion starts around what is the publisher going to do for me? And then it kind of works its way towards what can you do for my game? And that's kind of an important kind of evolution of that discussion. So the best way I thought when I was thinking about what to say here is to frame this by categorizing this into what are things that a publisher should do for you and what are things that a partner should do for you. Now, these things aren't necessarily at odds with each other, but they don't also necessarily always come hand in hand. So this is what I want people to be careful to when they're talking to publishers, partners, game labels, whatever it's being called these days. You need to find out the potential publisher you're working for and find out what they're going to do for you and what you are looking for in a partner and reconcile those two things, okay? Because that's what's really, really important. You don't want to pay for things basically that you're not going to use, and you want to find a publisher who can do all the things you need it to do. Okay, so what can a publisher provide? These are the basic things that people think about when they're talking about a publisher. A developer can hypothetically do all of these things themselves. Actually, not hypothetically, they can do all these things themselves. That's what it's called self-publishing, and a lot of people do it. The reason people like Ojiro work with us is because they don't want to do them, and they think that a publisher can do them better and more efficiently, right? So they can focus on making the game. Give the thumbs up right now. Okay. Your royalty check it's due. These are the base level things, though, okay? These aren't things that should excite you. These are what you should be expecting from a publisher. I don't really want to dwell on all of them, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I do want to talk about marketing distribution, as I think these are the areas that are maybe most foreign to developers and maybe distinguishing characteristics, I guess, between different publishers you can talk to. So marketing. Marketing is like saying I'm a game developer. It's game development. Like, what does that mean? There's a lot of things in marketing. There's a lot of different disciplines. That's PR, that's advertising, that's events. It's everything that's going to position and communicate your game out to the world. And this is where you need to start asking questions. You're going to see this theme throughout my discussion. You need to start asking questions about everything that this publisher that you're talking to might do. So the PR teams, for example, understand, is it them doing the PR? Is it a team of people doing the PR? Are they contracting this out? All of these things are valid. But finding out where are their PR teams when they say they're going to do PR, is it just North America? Because that's not good. There's a lot of people outside of North America that buy video games, and they want to be talked to in their own kind of with their own cultural nuances and localized, the information you're giving them into their language. Do they include streamers and YouTubers when they're talking about PR? If they don't include YouTubers and streamers, walk out of the door, lock that door, and set the building on fire because they don't know what they're doing. Advertising. How are they going to spend this money? Like, I think a lot of times we talk to folks and we'll mention advertising, they don't even ask what that means, right? I think and we then give the information, or at least someone should give the information to them. But you need to ask how this money will be spent. Okay? They don't look at the line item and go, great, we got a great advertising budget. You need to find out what that means and how they're going to spend it. And then what events do they go to? Do they go to events? Do they have people that go to events outside of North America? I think that's important too. There's a lot of amazing things like Bit Summit in Japan, Ojiro went to, and there's a lot of amazing events to go to that are going to spread your game outward. So just be mindful of where their PR activities are really happening. And then, of course, a cohesive campaign, right? You need to look at what they've done. What is their strategy? What have they done in the past? How do they customize that for different games? There's not a template to marketing. There's not a template to game development. I guess there is if you're making some really clone mobile games or something like that. I didn't look at you for a reason. Not you. But you need to find out what their strategy is. Find out what their beliefs are in marketing. The other part is distribution. I'm going to be honest, like 5 years ago, publishers that we know or people I know or any publisher could tell you, well, I can get your game on Steam. And that was a lot of times enough for people to get excited and sign up with them. And I don't think that's right, and that's definitely not right anymore. I mean, anyone can get your game on Steam, or you can bypass Steam, or you can go on PlayStation, there's itch, there's all sorts of amazing places to get your game directly to consumers. But I will note, when I was thinking about this, it's fair or unfair, publishers do have their advantage. So you should ask them about what these advantages might be, because one of the things I talk about is publishers get direct lines sometimes to a lot of people at them because they have a lot of content. Then people at Steam or Valve or PlayStation or Xbox or whoever, you have a direct contact there, and there's advantages of having that for placement, store placement, things like that. And there's things like publisher sales. Like, again, right or wrong, there's a publisher sale that Devolver Digital will get, and it will increase revenue for these games. So you need to ask your publisher what they do and how they're going to make more money than you would make on yours alone when it comes to sales and distribution. And the last thing I'd say on this distribution is look what else you're going to be amongst when, with the catalog of games that publisher has, to see where you sit. There's some games, there's some publishers out there or partners or whatever you want to call them at this point in the discussion that specialize in things. There's point-and-click adventure folks that do really, really good, have a lot of point-and-click adventures, and you would sit amongst them, and there's some synergy there. So these are what a publisher, like I said, should provide. And I liken this is the basics. When you're buying a car, and the car salesman says, well, it's got 4 wheels, it's got windshield wipers, and it'll take you from point A to point B. Like, yeah, I know that. Like, sell me on what's next. And I think this is the crucial moment for a lot of developers that don't keep asking questions. Or the publisher doesn't provide more answers of what they're going to do beyond those things. I don't know how to emphasize this enough, but these things that you see up here, that's the base level thing you should be expecting. So what do I mean? So what's next? What's after that, right? And this is where I kind of got in my head this discussion that was going on, discussion with developers we work with, and discussion with the folks that I work with at my company. What's next step? And we think it's being a true partner. And what do I mean like that? Well, let me back up. Those are all the questions you're going to ask that publisher. Ask them about funding, ask them about things. But these, when you're finding a partner, you're going to ask them, some questions I'm going to get into. But it's very important to start asking questions to the developers they worked with previously, right? That's where you're going to find a new angle, a new way of maybe assessing this publisher, because they're going to tell you what happened, whether it was good or bad. And here's another thing. When you're talking to developers from this publisher that you're speaking with, don't just talk to the people that sold a lot of copies, because they're probably going to be pretty happy, right? And they're probably going to be pretty pleased with it. Go find the developer that maybe, the game was fine, but it didn't sell a ton of copies, because you maybe can find a new dimension to that discussion. And find more about how that publisher carries themselves when maybe things aren't as stellar as you had hoped. So what can a partner provide? A true partner, and again, this is where I think a developer needs to start looking and start assessing more, and not stop at what does a publisher provide. These things, like I said, aren't easy to ascertain, and the publisher is going to, there's a salesman you're basically talking to. They want to sell you on them as a company. And I'm going to speak to creativity enthusiasm, aka giving a fuck about your game. And that's, I know it's language, but that's an important part, because you don't want to sign up for somebody that really doesn't care about your game once it's signed on. The stage and a spotlight, a personal relationship, and brutal honesty. So when I say creativity, I don't just mean good ideas for launch trailers. I don't just mean hey, what about some slow-mo action and some slow-mo music? It's going to be beautiful. I'm not talking about those kind of things. I'm talking about they're creative, enthusiastic about every element of your game. That's just marketing, that's distribution, that's production, that's funding, working with you in the way you may have money already, and doing things smart and different. To make sure that you're happy and that you're comfortable. So don't just check stuff off a list. These are people that are thinking and being creative about every part of your game. Again, look at the publisher's body of work. That's the easiest thing to do. You can scroll through their YouTube channel. You can scroll through their website. You can scroll through Metacritic. You can see what they've worked on. You can see where they've been successful and where they maybe have applied creativity to everything they do. You need to find out if they've done what you've, done things that are successful before and how that might apply to your game. Frankly, they're going to show you all the best things they've ever done and the big fancy launch trailers, or they could. I'm just saying a good one's going to show you some smart thinking. And I'm not going to try and pimp us out as a publisher. That's the whole point. I just want to talk about it in general. But one thing I do want to reference, because I use this in my discussion with developers as a point of when you're thinking about every aspect of it. And this is a game called Hotline Miami that we worked on in 2011, 2012. And this is the point I want to make is this ridiculous phone number we set up for Hotline Miami. It was just late one night, and we're thinking of fun things to do. And if you've played the game, part of the game is you get these crazy calls from a telephone, and you get these crazy messages. So we thought it would be fun to, we found a Google Voice number in in Miami, Florida, and we grabbed it, and we left a weird message, and we start leaving this phone number in press releases, website, social media. So we sent that out for a week, never checked it. That'd be funny. What if people start calling it? What if they leave messages? To open it up, it's got 4,000 voicemails and 600 text messages, which I didn't know you could do on Google Voice, and was very concerning what people were writing. But the cool thing, my point with this is it's not, don't just look at the high level fancy things that you think are, those are very important. Trailers are important, booths are important, but look for where people are thinking of things like this that cost nothing, and really, like this, engage the community and get them excited and talking about it. Because that's where I think you're going to find that difference in creativity. The next thing is stage and spotlight. A good publisher should put this developer first, right? This is important for your personal fulfillment as a developer, but it's also very important for you as a studio and you as maybe a lone developer. That when you're done with this game, people know about your work and that you did it. And you were the one that made this. And that when you're ready to do your next thing, that they know who you are. It's not about necessarily whose logo is bigger, but just make sure that you are always center stage whenever your game is being presented, and not the publisher putting their name out there first. And a good partner will do this. And I will be, frank with you, we fight for this, have to fight, platforms and first-party people to say, I know what your rules are, but you got to take Devolver Digital off of this. You need to put the developer on there, because I think it's very important that people understand that they made it. I can't make games. I can barely put together a PowerPoint. I promise you that. And I think it's important for you and your studio to have that kind of spotlight put on you. The one thing I will note And I think, Ojiro is up here. It's a really good example. Not all developers necessarily want that spotlight. When we were first working together, had to go to a Twitch stage. What was it? PAX East, we had some Twitch thing. And, he came into me and was like, I'm not super excited about being in the spotlight on this one. And so your publisher, your partner, needs to understand that, needs to understand what your little idiosyncrasies might be, what you are comfortable doing. And maybe you, the publisher, not you, the developer, you, the publisher, might need to speak for your game, okay? And not talking about marketing bullet points from a fact sheet. I'm talking about knowing your game inside and out, being able to demo the hell out of that game in front of somebody, speak for you, and represent you and your studio well. I think this is a pretty crucial part because the whole idea is you guys can focus on your game. You're not going to be able to go to every show. You're not going to be able to go to every event. And you need to make sure that partners out there that you trust will represent your game well and speak kind of in the tone that you want it to be presented. Okay, this one is me almost tearing up over there when Ojiro was up here because it's a personal relationship. Like, you need to make sure this is a very aspirational thing, but you're looking for a personal relationship with this folks. This partner you're going to work with, they're going to be a part of your lives for 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And you need to make sure that you can develop you don't have to necessarily like them, but you have some sort of personal working good relationship with them. You may not want to have a beer with them and spend the night at their house and staying up all night playing NBA Jam. But you do have to have some sort of personal relationship with them. And you need to understand the organization of the company itself, right? The guy let's say me, that is signing your game, or let's not say me, I'm not supposed to use examples of me. The person that's signing your game, you need to make sure if that's not the person you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, who is that? Understand how that company works, how that publisher works, and who are the people you can go to and speak with when things need to get done. And you're not talking, to the person that's just your handler, the person that can actually execute and make things happen for you. Oh, the other part, I think I have it up here. Yeah, can they contact them at night, weekends, or mid-coitus? I know it's kind of a joke, but you need to understand that you guys don't work 9 to 5. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's more like 5 to 9 based on the people I work with. You guys have insane hours, right? So you're going to need someone there, someone you're going to be able to talk to and contact at any point. And I think you need to talk to the other developers they work with to see how that goes. Because if it says 9 to 5 company, and you're going to get an answering machine, or you're not going to be able to get a hold of them, that's something important you're going to need to know, because things go wrong constantly, as you know. And then what are the lengths that people are, this publisher, this potential partner is willing to go for you? A lot of the people I know I'm talking to and a lot of people we work with, they're very small companies. And they're the same people that are making the game, the same people plugging in the computers to the events. And so you need to understand how far this partner, this publisher will go. And they're not too fancy to, go get your breakfast tacos when you need them, when you're setting up your demo kiosk. And then the last thing is brutal honesty. If you have those other things, a personal relationship, for example, the brutal honesty won't be a problem. And I mean this is going to be a two-way street when I talk about brutal honesty. There's got a lot of uncomfortable talks that might happen when you're working with a business like a publisher, right? Money is an uncomfortable subject. Not just the initial talks about money, but ongoing talks about needing more money. And then when money starts rolling in from the game being sold, understanding and being very clear how that money's coming in and where it's going. Being able to talk about these things plainly and openly is very important. And then talking about, I put on here, tell each other that you suck. You need to be able to, the publisher, the partner that you're talking to, needs to be able to tell you what they think honestly about the game. And you need to be able to accept that criticism and either take it or dismiss it. I know we talked about quite a bit. I was watching your talk, and there's a lot of elements that were like, I personally didn't like that. And Ojiro's like, cool, fuck you, I'm keeping it in there. And it's great. And that's the kind of things you need to be able to say to a real partner, right? At the same time, he needs to be able to tell me, I'm sorry I'm picking on you. There were supposed to be other developers up here that are now sitting in the back, I see. The other thing that I would say here is that you need to be able to tell that partner, that publisher, that you don't like what they're doing. You need to speak up. If you don't like how the game's being presented, you don't like the trailer, you don't like whatever it is, the Steam page, whatever it is, speak up. It's your game. Take a hold of it and tell them that they're doing a bad job on something. And the last thing I want to say on this brutal honesty thing is this comes up in a lot of discussions when I'm talking with developers and they tell me they're talking to another publisher. If a publisher guarantees you success, they're fucking lying to you, okay? There's no guarantee of success. I got the clearance to talk about this, but this guy, Paul Hart, who made the game called Fistful of Gun, it was a great game. It didn't sell really well. And we talked about it. We were honest with each other the whole time of what these projections are looking like, and then once the game wasn't doing well, what could we do to hopefully, the game recouped, made money, but how we can maximize it? Because he spent a lot of time on this game. And we maybe didn't do a good job, and he maybe didn't make the best game he possibly could. No one needs to point fingers here. You need to be brutally honest, like, how do we fucking make this work now that the game isn't going, as well as we had hoped? So I think that you need to talk, like I said, to other developers and see how they handle not only success, but not success. I'm not going to say failures, but not success. There are a lot more things in this. I just have some things that I thought were important to bring up. But this extends like this. You need to find this deeper level of commitment that extends past this kind of publisher-developer relationship. This is not an all-encompassing list, but my point is I think you just need to look past the basics and what the publisher should give you and look beyond like what you really need as a person, because you all have different situations, you all have different circumstances which are operating. So you need to look past that and ask as many questions as possible. So this leads to this last little piece about some common issues that crop up, right? This is all, again, anecdotal, but I thought they were worthy of these amazing slides that I put together. Clearly, some of these are related to the publisher-partner kind of elements that I just talked about. So I'll make it kind of quick. Intellectual property, IP. If the game is your baby, the IP is its soul, okay? So you need to take care of both and hold on to both. Do not sell your IP. Do not make it part of the agreement. There's a lot of reasons why. Obviously, sequels and things like that, but just that ends up being one of the most important parts of this. And it strangely still comes up in conversations we have, like, do you guys want IP? And if they want IP, that's a whole nother level. You should absolutely hold on to it. But owning it is just kind of a part of it. You need to be mindful how your IP is being presented, right? And how it's being positioned overall. If there's damage done to it while you are promoting the game, marketing game, it doesn't just affect that game, it affects your studio, and it affects any future games in that series. And the last part is from the best movie of all time, Spaceballs. And the idea is your IP is not just your game. Remember that. It is about any sort of opportunities that exist within it. So whether it's T-shirts, comic books that are made, movies, feature-length film, Downwell the movie, which is coming to theaters next year. Is it?
Apparently.
Okay, good. I got the IP. So, but it's something important to keep in mind that it's not just the game itself, and that these things do not let a partner, whoever it is, mess with how your game is presented and how your IP is presented. This is like, I want to have a whole other quiet talk in a room with each and every one of you about agreements. Do not settle, do not assume anything in agreement, okay? Ask the questions, it's your right to do it. One example, please be very clear on how the money flows into the game and back out of the project when it's done. There's a whole other talk that would be way more boring than this one, but it's really important of understanding how your game is going to be recouped, how the costs the publisher might put out there might recoup them, how they're going to recoup, when they're going to be recouped, because it could be the difference between how much money you're making, like not only short-term but long-term as well. It can be very tricky, so ask for examples. One thing that we do is we provide a spreadsheet where you can literally see like where the money's going in, and then you type in the unit sold and the average unit price, and it shows you exactly how it comes back out. I think this is so important because you do not want to be wrong on something like that, especially after the fact. And then I put lock your shit up too, developers. Like, make sure you have clear agreements amongst yourselves and the freelancers you work with. We can't help you if you had an agreement, a handshake, chest bump, or whatever it is that about the music or about some freelance work, that if you don't have an agreement, there's nothing we can do about it as a publisher. Like, that's the agreement you made. And oftentimes people start asking, well, what do I do? Can you guys pay them this money? And that's not in our agreement. It becomes a really tough conversation to have. So make sure that you understand, have a very clear understanding, ideally an agreement with other people you work with. And the last piece is poor communication. Do not save changes to the very end when you're working with a partner or a publisher or a partner. You need to, if the game's going to be late, bring that up as soon as you think it's going to be late, because that helps everyone, including yourself, involved. Knowing who the decision makers are, talking to them, and being very informed back and forth of what's going on is super important. I know it's pretty generic to say, have good communication, but I can't emphasize it enough. You're in charge of your game. Make sure you're in charge of your game. Stay in charge of your game. And then the last part is related to what we talked about before, sustainability. I think that's a huge thing that people don't think about. At least we see it with developers we work with and developers we don't, is understanding sustainability of your publisher and your sustainability. If you sign on with somebody, like I said, there's lots of them out there that call themselves publishers. You need to do your research, like we're talking about, that they're going to be around when your game launches. Because if you sign a deal and they go away, that's really, really going to hurt you and your situation. So kind of know who funds them, right? Who's funding that who's funding that publisher? How do they have money? And what are they going to do? Are they going to be around, right? But also, don't plan for yourself. Plan on your funding when you're pitching. Do not lowball a publisher. That helps nobody. You need to understand what's going to take to launch your game, and then what's going to take for those 2 or 3 months after your game is launched. When the money starts coming in, Steam, PlayStation, they all pay. It's not like someone buys the game and they hand you your money, right? It takes months sometimes, 6 weeks to 2 months for your money to come through. So if you've only funded your game up to release, you might have 2 months that you don't have any money coming in. And we see this time and time again. And, it's fine. We can keep advancing people. But I think it's good because if you're in an agreement and the money runs out and you really need money and you ask them for more, they could ask for, royalty change and things like that, things you don't want to get into. And then also have an idea what your next project is, if possible. It's always good to, if something doesn't go well, you're not spinning your wheels for a few months wondering, what am I going to do next? I know that's easier said than done from the publisher up here. What do I have up here? Oh, provocative recap. So there's lots of publishing options that a lot of people that do a lot of things. It's very important to understand what that publisher you're working with, what they do, what their angle is, what they do well, what they might not do as well. Understand your partner completely, and everything you can about that partner. And the last part, or second to last part, is you're in charge, so stay in charge. Never forget that. Never forget you're the one that made this game. Ultimately, they need you more than you need them. You could self-publish if you want to, and that's my last point. Self-publish. I mean, there's a lot of people that do it very successfully, and it's much better than getting into a bad deal. I know there might be tough situations you might be in, but you don't need a fucking publisher. So you can self-publish if you need to. It's better than being in a bad agreement. And now, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Oh, no questions. Apparently no questions. But thank you very much for coming out.